You know what they say, never talk about politics, religion, or sex, lest you risk damaging your friendships. But what happens when you have three people whose friendship is built on debating those very topics? One's a believer surrounded by skeptics, one's a heterosexual surrounded by gays, and one's a moderate surrounded by extremists, and they're all hardly qualified. Introducing Hardly Qualified, a podcast recorded in prosperous Calgary, Alberta, where Will Connor, Rob Walker, and Angry Duck get together every week to discuss the issues of the day. Rob's on the left, Duck is on the right, and Will is stuck in the middle. And here they are, hardly qualified to pontificate about the issues they're talking about. But if nothing else, they're entertaining.
And welcome back to Hardly Qualified. I know I should say it, but I always say it. I don't know why I say it. Damn it!
It's fine.
Okay,
it's all good.
Whatever. It's kind of
No,
like you've paused it for. It's like a week-long commercial break between podcasts.
I suppose
you know, that's how I say
suppose
it.
So, yeah.
Maybe it is, yeah. We bring you these important messages from real life.
Yeah, that's how we should end every podcast, eh?
Right.
Please listen to a message from our sponsor and you just let it drop.
I suppose it makes the difference because "and welcome back" makes it feel like the people coming in are guests. When is, I hope by now, if there are 10 episodes or whatever, people feel at home and just sort of, here it is.
I very much believe that there's 4 of us in this conversation.
Yeah.
I really do.
The downside, I think, with saying that, though, is that it implies to new listeners, new listeners, that they're walking into the middle of something.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
Right?
Sort of.
But
Well,
that's
yeah.
okay.
yeah,
You can go back
kinda,
to episode 0 and download it and listen to the whole thing if you really feel that disconnected. I mean, we'd encourage you to do so, then you'll see how much we suck.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
come on. The first one didn't even have Ducky in it. It was pretty good.
That one wasn't even... Whoa! I didn't even catch that thing until about half a second after I started responding to it.
Good one, Bob. Good one.
Anyway, I used to watch this web series, the Star Trek web series that was made by fans, and right on their main site they said, yeah, we've got 5 years worth of episodes that we've written and we've designed costumes for, and we've filmed and CGI'd, and this is all stuff that we've done on our own, and a lot of it is really bad.
So
Yeah.
start near the end.
So check out our last 4 or 5 episodes, and if you like what we've become, then go back and start at the beginning and catch up. But don't judge us by how we started, because we were brand new and we weren't very good.
And you're talking about Hidden Frontier, aren't you?
Something like that. I
Hidden
think so.
Frontier,
I don't know.
which is
That's got to
awesome.
go into the show notes. Put that in the references
Yep.
for sure. I want to check that out.
It's awesome.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is William. I am your host and theoretical moderator. To the left is Mr. Robert Walker. To the right is Mr. Angry Duck with an exclamation mark. Welcome.
Well, thank
How are you
you.
guys?
Moderator.
Well, I guess. I
He's
don't know.
You're the sysadmin.
Yeah,
The sysadmin.
right. He's
Yeah.
allegedly the moderate in this conversation. Mm-hmm.
Well, the intro says I'm stuck in the middle. I really don't like our intro, actually. I got a question for you about that, Ducky, because the way you wrote that. So, one's surrounded by atheists. Okay, fine. I understand that that's probably the point of intellectual tension between us and Rob. And I do see you guys tend to be a little more out there than I do. I do think that ideologically I might be more in the middle between you two. But surrounded by gays? Can you explain that to me? So
Okay,
does
what
that
I was
mean
trying to do...
that you have no way of relating to us because we're gay, but the way that he says that, it makes it sound like there's an orgy in the room.
I can't put my hand down without touching a wet surface.
I'm like, and every time I listen to the intro, it bugs me. So we gotta change.
Okay, we can change it. Now that we have 10 episodes worth of us bantering back and forth, I can find 30 seconds worth of clips that we can splice together in little 10-second snippets or whatever. But the reason that, first of all, I just sat down and wrote that on a whim. right? Because I was like, Willie, you want to do a voiceover? And Willie was like, sure, I'd totally like to after I do my tea, right? Pip pip cheerio. And I was like, so I was thinking that, there's three of us, and we're not the same. There are things that are different, and there are things that are the same about us. There's things we have in common, like my rational perspective of the universe I share with Will, right?
As though mine is
Okay.
irrational, but never mind. Okay, go on.
That is the implication. Yes, Bob. Thank you for picking up on.
No, and I understood that that's how you framed it, but I was just wondering, like, is there that difference, that lack of understanding? Are you like, I really don't get how these guys can be gay?
No. It's just that's one of the fundamental differences that makes me different from you too.
And it was the best one?
That's all I could come up with. What else do you two have in common that I don't share with either of you?
We're polite.
So what? One of them's an asshole surrounded by kind people? Is that better?
It might give people a proper warning as to what they're getting into. Oh God.
Anyway, like I said, if we can change it, and yeah, we will change it. So, I guess that's what we'll do. Is sometime in the next couple of episodes, look forward to a new intro.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I'm getting more work to do.
Oh, whatever.
Oh, you get so much joy out of it, Ducky. Don't even kid yourself. Anyway.
You know what? I'll give you a rate.
Well, see, I get to manipulate what everybody says.
See, this is it, right?
Crazy. Yeah, that's what it. If that was true, I would come out sounding way better than I do. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
So, I don't put a whole lot of effort into the
I
product.
think you sound fine. I don't know what you're talking about. So, how are you, Rob, this week?
Well, I'm okay, and I find, I don't know what it is, whether it's academic work or just people coming out of the woodwork. Okay, you're back from Birmingham and we want to see you, but I just don't have enough spoons to go around lately.
Right.
I'm just tired. I'm just tired. And being with people is so interesting and lots of intriguing conversations, but just my energy level is so much lower than usual. Okay, so that's my version of Ducky's, didn't feel so hot last podcast, but good week overall. A little bit of conflict with family that worked out, a little bit of academic angst, a little bit of whatever, it's all good.
Sure.
It's all good. Ideal.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
And you're yourself, Ducky?
I finished Heart of the Swarm.
StarCraft.
Ooh.
StarCraft, woo! And I get to go back in for another training shift at work on Tuesday again. I love my boss, but she keeps making me do all the menial shit that she's got people there to do during the day, and because of that, we never actually get to my training. So this is my fourth training shift that should have been done, a month ago.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah.
are you already doing the stuff that you're allegedly being trained for, or is there delay?
No, I've been doing it for months.
Oh.
That was what I was trained to do when I started.
Right.
The only specific difference now between before my training and after my training is that I'm now solely responsible for one section of product, one class of product that's in the store. That I'm responsible for choosing what goes out, choosing what we stop carrying, how it's organized, how much of it we bring in, that kind of stuff. I'm now solely responsible for that. I don't have the authority to coerce my coworkers to stop fucking up my work, though, so every night I come in, I have to fix it all. But, yeah, that's probably the only difference. Practically, other than that, other than doing the test a month ago and passing it with a 93%, I have, nothing wrong, or nothing has changed, really. But she has to go through the motions in order to make it work, but we keep getting sidetracked by she's got something to do, or she's dealing with issues, or she loves to socialize, so a lot of the time she spends outside talking to customers, and when she finally has time to do my stuff, we've run out of time,
right,
or some crisis occurs or something. So I'm going back in for another training shift, and it's killing me. This 4 nights of nights and then 1 day at the end, or at the beginning. It's brutal. It's because I have been a get up at 4 p.m., go to bed at 8 in the morning type person my entire life. Pretty much since I was about 10 years old, it's been like that. And to do night, morning, night, morning, it's just, ugh.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
And how are you?
So,
or are you done, Ducky? Sorry.
well, I don't know. I wanted to talk a little bit about Heart of the Swarm.
Okay, so
Oh, StarCraft and gamer geeks. Okay.
Kerrigan and fan service. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Let me shake my head. She's got bone plate armor in her ass crack, but her tits and her ass cheeks totally fleshy, plump, juicy, not covered in any kind of Zergling monster at all. It's like her face, her tits, and her ass are the only feminine parts left of her, and they have to be showcased to remind us that she was a pretty girl.
Right.
Right? It's just, whatever.
Oh, I hear a whole bunch of disappointed heterosexual male right here.
no, I think it's more frustration. I mean,
It's more frustration with the idea of, like, I like characters that are true to themselves, and if you're going to take a chick and throw her into a mixture of mutagens so that she becomes a giant monster, you don't keep the hypersexualized aspects of her.
she's got more than
Like,
a bra to protect herself.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, even her feet, her little monster, zombie, gross, infested, clawed feet are shaped like high fucking heels.
Oh, are they really?
Yes, she's got
that's so
giant
disappointing.
toes on the front. Yeah, and I was like,
It's so disappointing.
really?
Well, because that...
I don't think it's really disappointing. It's just,
Well,
it's not true. It's fan service. Let's put it.
Well,
it's
yeah.
fan service, and I have never had any respect for fan service.
It's also well, from my perspective, what you're describing is what some people call emphasized femininity. So it's just very stereotypical, very narrow, sort of over-sexualized representation of femininity.
Well, it's just her though. There's like. That's the thing. There's like 5 other female Zerg characters, and they have vaguely feminine shapes, but they are covered in body armor, and they do have like weeping sores on their faces, and they do have giant long fingernails and spikes for arms, and they're obviously monsters that have been born and bred as monsters, and they've had this just little bit of feminine, feminization added to them to emphasize the fact that they're supposed to be a female monster.
Right.
And yet, with Kerrigan, she's a hot chick first, and then they just kind of slapped on arms.
This is what I mean.
You know what I mean?
It's disappointing, but that's what the fan service is that people actually, and marketers and whatever, actually feel that that's necessary in order to get something across, but I don't know what, other than, make sure that we get the sexiness or the kind of femininity that we approve of out there. Because that'll sell.
See, that's what I'm talking. There's no plot-wise or, within the storyline or setting itself. Right. There's no redeeming reason for that. It seems to be purely directed at the fourth wall.
Understood.
Same thing in Planet Side too. The women are just, it's like huge bubble butts. Like their butt cheeks, I swear to God, are probably larger than the heads on these characters.
Oh, jeez.
Are they shiny too?
They are. It's horrible. Like I can understand you want to have female representation, maybe even a little sexualization if you must. I mean, the guys have a bit of a package protruding from their armor as well. So, give it on both sides. But I mean, literally, if I'm running in squad tactics and one of the guys or one of the girls in the squad is playing a female character, it's really distracting. Like it's. Anyway, sorry.
Says the gay guy. That's really interesting, though. That's...
Not from the attractive point of view.
No, I understand.
It's like it's
imagine
absurd.
how those of us.
It's really absurd.
That's okay. That's the word I'm looking for. The idea that Kerrigan, needs to be hypersexualized is absurd to me. That, and that it takes away from her character a little bit. I think that the developers seem to think that she needs to be, or is even willing to consider that she needs to be hypersexualized. Right?
Yep, that's a problem.
But
Having said that, I love
Yes.
StarCraft.
The video game industry is
Oh, yeah.
failing us again.
Well, of course, but it has been
still.
for years.
Yes.
Yes,
If people didn't buy it, right?
right. But you love
Well,
StarCraft.
you can get over it though, right?
You're not going to make everybody happy, though. I mean, there is going to be a demographic who thinks that's awesome.
Right, fair enough. What do you want to bet? It's 18 to 34.
No, man, it's like 13 to 22.
Oh, okay. Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
I don't know. It might be a little older than that, because keep in mind that a lot of these video gamers that we're talking about nowadays, they grew up on ColecoVision and Atari
Right.
and Commodore 64 and stuff, and they've got their own kids.
Right.
So right, so it's not just directed at 13 to 24-year-olds, because there are 40-year-olds out there to whom this stuff still appeals, or will appeal, or that's. I don't know why I said still. It's not like you grow out of liking a certain form of media. but
So
whatever.
You can.
I want to ask a question about sort of gaming philosophy or gaming world stuff, but I want to make sure that we get to Will and his week before I come back to it. So,
My week has been interesting, to say the least.
okay.
Yeah. I decided to run for publishing editor of the paper at Mount Royal.
Okay.
This is the selector. Is that what's reflector?
The
Reflector.
reflector, yes. We
Yeah,
selectively reflect what we publish. Whatever.
And it was an ecto or something, right?
Yeah, it's
The Hannibal Lecter.
so I was talked into it by a number of people, and literally an 11th hour application, got it in 10 minutes before the deadline, and felt horrible about it, actually. So yeah, I withdrew. There's a lot that I want to do with and for the paper, but it's more on the business and policy side of things. So I also want to take a semester off, so I have to be a full-time student in order to be the publishing editor of the paper, and I don't want to be a full-time student next semester, maybe even for the whole year. I just need time to catch up on money and refocus and, take a break. I've been doing this part-time for 4 years. I'm kind of getting sick of the building. Anyway, so it's just kind of, I withdrew, and I'm a member of the board already, and I think that I'm just going to ask for permission from the board to continue on my policy development work and procedural work and planning and long-term planning while I'm not actually an official student. I don't think they'll have a problem with that. So it allows me to accomplish what I really wanted to accomplish, while allowing, there was only one other person who had been nominated for the position, and he really is the best guy to be the publishing editor. I think that he would produce a way better and consistent product than I could. So that was kind of an interesting experience. Getting caught up in politics and realizing that, having that feeling of, okay, what, there was the job that I wanted that I didn't get, and then there was another job which, if I would have run, I'm pretty sure I would have won for the paper. Just because I have that immediate name recognition, having just been through an election, although that could have a negative effect as well. But it was, I don't know, it's been an interesting week in terms of politics and whatnot, and that's kind of when I realized, I just need to get out of this school for a year, because it's taking over my life.
Gotcha.
So, and then I had to put my cat down this morning, which really sucked.
God. Which one?
JJ.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
He's been having problems, and started just incontinence issues over the last couple of months, and we've put up with it, and we've been cleaning the house constantly and cleaning him, and it hasn't been getting better, and we took him into the vet and that we've been working with, and she's like, in all honesty, I would have done it 3 weeks sooner, and you guys should be proud of yourselves for holding out this long. But it was most likely, given the symptoms and everything that was going on, it wasn't just incontinence. It was probably an internal cancer that was causing the body to react that way. So without having to spend several thousands of dollars to find out for sure, it's kind of a hard decision, right? I mean, how much do you invest in a 20-pound animal?
Right.
Because at some point, that's really what it is. And the other part, it's your buddy.
Yeah.
It's a $3 cat, but it's also a member of your family.
Exactly, right?
How do you reconcile those two things, right?
And for us, it was really looking at it, giving the symptoms, the likelihood of what was going on, the fact that we've been working with them for 2 months and not getting better.
Yeah.
Even if we were to throw insane amounts of money into cancer treatments, it would only prolong his life by 6 months to a year if we're lucky.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's no sense
he was
putting
my favorite
him
of your
through that
cats, too.
torment or putting us through that financial torment.
Right.
Or even emotional torment. Because
Well,
you go through that process, you know you're just prolonging the inevitable.
Yeah. My roommate just went through the same thing. He's had a cat who's 12, 14 years, and she's, had a stroke, and she went blind in one ear, and she can't eat, and she's got no teeth, and she's just got health issue on health issue on top of health issue, and, she's been, like, pissing in people's laundry baskets because she won't go down the stairs to the litter box. And finally we just, got fed up and said, hey, take care of your cat. Take her to the vet, find out what's going on, get her fixed, because this neglect is not good. And he ended up putting her down. And he was talking about it. He said he didn't have a problem with it right up until the moment that she died.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the second she took that last gasping breath, it all hit him, and he suddenly was overcome with regret and self-doubt, and he just broke down, and he was just shattered for like 3 days. He couldn't function, and he kept running into the same idea that he kept circling his brain, was that this was all his fault, and that he was just too lazy to take care of her. So he just gave up and had her killed. And I was like, you can't look at it from a perspective of, that this is convenience for you. I mean, she was ill, chronically, and her quality of life was not that good. And, putting her down was probably the most humane thing you could have done. And to get sort of, bogged down in this concept that it was just, the only reason you did it was for speed of convenience, I think, is not, because it's like, because the way he put it was that it was one of the very few things in his life that loved him, and he killed it.
Right.
Right? And that's sort of the perspective that he was looking at it from. And that's why it was just, he was just melting down over it.
That's really hard, though. Like, that's...
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you talk to somebody about that,
Well, I think it really comes to, given that the cat, like our cat especially, I mean, and I would assume his, if that cat was out in the wild, it wouldn't have lasted beyond a few weeks, where it may have had months more, or even years more. I mean, ours was rescued from a campground, right? So who knows? The coyote would have knocked it off 3 years ago. Like, you really don't know. But you also got to look at it too. Then the way I kind of look at it is, and this how I approach death in general is, I'm just thankful for the time I have with people, whether they leave me alive or they leave me dead. Time with another living, breathing entity, whatever, is always going to be finite. At one point, one of us is going to go, and it may be willingly, and it may not be willingly. And you just need to appreciate. Well, you don't need to, but I mean, I appreciate the time that I'm given by that individual, whether it be a cat or not, that they've chosen to spend with me, or maybe forcibly confined to spend with me. But, the cat could have been miserable, and he wasn't. You know what I mean, though? It's kind of like you just appreciate what you got and realize that nothing is infinite, so...
See, that's the perspective I have, that's the perspective my roommate has, but when I mentioned it to one of our mutual friends, she was like, just tell him that when he dies, he'll go to heaven, and the animal will be waiting at the bridge between earth and heaven, and you'll be able to go into heaven together. And I'm like, you know, he's an atheist too. He doesn't believe in any of that magic nonsense, and trying to tell him that as a way to assuage his grief is just going to be patronizing and insulting.
Right.
Especially for an atheist. I mean,
especially for an atheist, right?
One of the things I said to my husband was, you know, I really hope nobody says he's in a better place now. And he's like, they just mean well. I'm like, I know, but I will go off on them. Because I am emotionally raw enough right now not to. I'm like, you want to fucking go there? Bring it on. Right? So.
But, I mean, like, part of being a responsible pet owner is recognizing that the day will come when you have to choose to end your animal's life. Or most likely. I mean, especially for inside cats. I mean, I've grown up with animals, and a lot of them have died from, natural causes, or not so natural causes, but they weren't external. They weren't internalized. You know what I mean? They're like, they got hit by a car, or they got, caught by a coyote, or they just disappeared and never came home one day, or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And I've had to put down animals. I did it with a bullet, but it's the same sort of idea, is that you are choosing to be responsible for ending the life of something you care for. Right? And it's something you get into, or you should be thinking about getting into, when you decide to become responsible for an animal.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, my cats are young; they're still only 5 or 6 years old. But in probably about five years or so, they're not going to be around anymore. Right?
JJ
Maybe
was
10.
only 6, right? So I mean, you don't know.
You don't know. I mean, my cats are in relatively good health. I take them to the vet, and they get their checkups, and they take their shots and all that stuff. So, I mean, there's no sort of glimpse on the horizon that there's anything coming. But, like I said, as a responsible pet owner, it's something you have to be prepared for before you even get into the position of taking care of an animal.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know what point I'm trying to make, but
well, you're just saying it's the reality, right? Like,
it's the reality of the situation.
And of course we know that going into it, but then you have this huge gap before it slaps you in the face, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we've been somewhat prepared for it because we had two cats that had a problem, and we took them in the same day, and JJ was having problems physically is when his symptoms started to manifest, and we also had another cat that was really sick, and then that's when we found out he was diabetic, right? So and so since then it's been like the last 2.5 months have been vet bills and dealing with sick cats, and part of it, and I know it sounds bad to say it, and I know everyone's going to say don't feel bad, but it still kind of does, is I'm kind of glad it's over. You know?
It's completely normal though, Will.
I'm not glad that he's gone. Right. I really am not.
Right.
But, like we came home and we were able to rip off all the sheets and towels off of everything and throw it in. And at least now we know when we come home, it's not going to smell like a litter box.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that is an upside, but it's like now we can, move on.
But I think with around death, I think it's completely normal, especially human, animal. I think the reaction is much the same with a family member, someone who's important to you, that it's completely normal to feel relieved, and some people feel tremendous guilt. I've bumped into people that feel tremendous guilt about, I shouldn't feel relieved that it's over, because I'm not. That doesn't translate, like you just said, Will. It doesn't translate into, I'm glad that one is gone. Right. But oh my God, I don't have to put up with this shit anymore. Yeah. Whew, and don't feel that that's weird. And if anyone tells you differently, I think they're not being very wise. I think that's a completely normal reaction. So, for what it's worth.
I don't think anyone would tell me differently. I just don't want to hear. It's an internalized thing. But anyway, we don't need to talk about depressing cats and death. Who knows? Maybe we get into death discussion someday.
Well,
I'm sure,
but I guess what I'm trying to say is sorry to hear about your cat, and it's important to acknowledge it. I really, that sounds glib, but I
not at all, and I appreciate it. So. I honestly do. I mean, it's nice to know that he made an impact on not just our lives, because there's the temptation to say it's just a freaking cat, get over it, right? Well, you guys have met him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I lived with I lived with you guys for like what?
2 years.
Almost 2 years, something like that. Yeah, and of your
With-
four
with
cats,
Jay- with
JJ
Jay
was my
anyway,
favorite.
yeah.
Hmm.
So
So I mean, yeah,
yeah.
I'm sad to hear that he had to go, but I'm glad that he's not suffering anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, he'd lost like 11% of his body weight in the last 6 weeks.
Phew.
So
Okay.
Because he was a little chubby little fucker. So
last year he was 31 pounds, which is what, like, I think it was like 14.7 kilograms. And when we weighed him before we euthanized him, he was exactly 9 kilograms. So,
Oh wow.
and because he was so big, I mean, the weight loss one wasn't necessarily seen as a bad thing, right? Because we've
All of
been
a
making
sudden,
steps.
all of a sudden the fat kitty is losing weight. Huzzah!
But in retro, like, I'm not trying to second guess or anything. It was an end we were trying to achieve, but it was also masking the other.
Yeah. Understood.
So
Understood.
anyway, we're going to have a bit of a conversation. We're gonna drop in here. I know it's gonna sound weird to everyone, and hopefully we've recorded and edited enough. It was part of our pre-show conversation, but we thought that it would actually make sense and maybe be appreciated by a general audience. Maybe you guys can give us some feedback on what you think, because we're talking about where we're coming from, where we're going, and what type of impact the show is having on our audience, and the issues and concerns that have been brought up by friends and family members and our involvement in this podcast. So we kind of want to share that with you guys and let us know what you think. And just be aware, we didn't really intend it to be broadcast, but like our very first one, it was just valuable enough that we're going to do it. So bear with the poor production values, and we're going to cut to that right now. And after that, we're going to...
let's take a break first, and then we'll cut to it.
Okay, well, we'll take a break, and then we'll cut to that, and then we're going to take another break, and then we're going to talk about video games.
Hey HQ fans, ever wondered where the heck is Calgary? So is George Hrab, musician, writer and producer of the renowned skeptical podcast, the Geologic Podcast. Having been featured at DragonCon, TAM, and even in front of a US president, George wanted to know more about our great city, so the Calgary Centre for Inquiry is sponsoring his visit. So if you, like him, will be in Calgary on April 31st, go to cfiyychrab.eventbrite, spelled BRITE.ca, and book your tickets. Ducky promises that if you use the promo code HQFan, all lowercase with no spaces, you'll save $2 off admission, and I'll be spared one day of whipping for every ticket sold. So please come to Calgary and see George, for the love of science and voiceover boys everywhere!
You wouldn't believe, guys, like, I'm actually considering that this one or the next one is my last podcast, because HQ is causing so much conflict in my neck of the woods that it's like, with my family, it's causing so much conflict that I don't know that I can stand the level of conflict that it creates in my household. When my family members, okay, this is how they interpret, and I don't know what to do with it because it's just really difficult. So I consistently, and have for as long as I've known you, considered you my friend, and actually a good friend, and I happen to be really happy to be back in contact with you. Almost everybody who hears the podcast
Thinks I hate you?
on my end thinks you hate me and that you're an abusive asshole.
Well, he is an abusive asshole.
Well, I am an abusive asshole, but you're not special. I'm abusive to everybody.
That's actually what some of my family members say. They're like, well, obviously this means that Ducky is an abusive character anyways, and what the fuck are you doing wasting so much of your time engaging with someone who doesn't listen to you and is disrespectful and abusive consistently? So
I don't think I'm disrespectful.
Well,
I'm just vehement in my disagreement. Like, see, if I didn't respect you, I wouldn't care that you had such ideas that were so opposite and contrary to my own. If I didn't respect you, I think it wouldn't matter. I'd say you're just a fucking moron and whatever, right?
Yep.
But the fact that I do respect you and I hold you in esteem is why it's so frustrating for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Like, I think I sort of look at it the same way. The thing is, like, and there are also other things format-wise about the podcast that are just driving everybody nuts on my end that listens to it. But, you know, they're like, this show is not a debate. Like, my family here sort of says, this is not a debate format. You are consistently set up as the liberal that gets shot down. And I don't always perceive it that way, but then I listen to the podcast and I can see where they're coming from, but I don't experience it the same way. But I can tell you, like, I've had fights with a capital F trying to defend your integrity as a person, Ducky. And then academic people that I know go, you're a PhD student. What the fuck are you doing on a podcast like that? You're going to undermine your own academic credibility if somebody finds out that you're on Hardly Qualified. Okay, and these are people that I also deeply respect, and so I like. If I had known that my stress would be at an 8 almost every week after, you know, and I enjoy it and I come back because I like hanging out with you, Ducky, and Will, you're not even remotely a problem with most folks.
It's because he never says anything.
Well, no, that's not true. You know what I mean? But okay, so they just hear this really sort of abusive undertone from you, and the fact that, you know, and then people get all academic with me and they're like, well, you realize, don't you? And I'm like, yes, I do. That, you know, Ducky, you have what's technically called a confrontational communication style. And my right,
Sorry.
well, duh. Yeah,
you don't agree with me, I'll bludgeon you until you do.
Well, exactly. I'll lay hands on you hard, fast, and continuously until you see my point of view. You know, and so but I, on the other hand, have, especially since I stopped being a fundamentalist around 20 years old, I have a conciliatory communication style. Collaborative is the technical term. And so so I always sort of sit there and go, okay, I think we're actually closer together, or I can actually, without violating my core values, I can actually get closer to my opponent in terms of what we're actually saying without compromising much. Whereas you tend to think of it, Ducky, in terms of black and white, and Rob is being thoroughly illogical and anti-scientific and blah, blah, blah. And I won't even get started on people when they hear you make comments about magical sky daddy and all this sort of thing. It's like, look, I realize that Richard Dawkins doesn't think that religion or religious people deserve any respect. I find the conversations in terms of the fallout that happens on my end very, very difficult to handle, because almost everyone who hears says to me, Rob, this is a complete waste of your time. What do you get out of this that you can't get from a group of people that's nearer to your size?
Okay, so what is your answer?
I don't know. This is why I'm having this conversation.
Okay, no, that's fair. Can I offer a suggestion?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, one, I appreciate that you brought it up as opposed to just dropping off, because that would have, not that I think that you would have, but I mean, some people might have.
Yeah, I should.
So, two things come to mind. One, it's your life, fuck them, but I realize that's not your approach. You go to the Hardly Qualified page, and the first thing you read is, we're not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Because
the way I look at it is, and I've gotten tremendous support. I mean, my friends are divided as to how they feel about you guys, and that's exactly how it should be as far as I'm concerned. I kind of worry too when I'm posting under my own domain name things like feminism is great, feminism is hate, and as a title, and all these other things, and let slip the dogs of the sex war. Can you all tell that these are Duckies. Anyway,
I actually quite like the puns for what it's worth.
no, that's not what I meant. What I mean is it's provocative, but it needs to be in order to contain
I hear that.
But the other thing is this: you are. I think the conflict comes because of your profession, and what people expect of you in your profession is to talk to people of like mind about things that they want to hear, for the most part. Or that they already understand. You're coaching within a narrative that they already get, right? So there isn't a lot of room, especially for a pastor to be publicly challenged in a church. I've never been to a church where it's permitted for somebody to stand up and go, "You're fucking wrong, and here's why," right? Because they'd be putting themselves at physical.
Okay. Well,
so
regardless, I don't think that's the central point. So please continue.
But it's part of it. So I think what's valuable about our podcast and our dynamic, there's two things. One, really what we're doing is we're being ourselves on air. And we might couch a couple of things. Our words are directly associated with us,
yes.
Right? Like, there's no effort. It's people can lob grenades at us, and that's okay. So we're having these conversations from we're just being ourselves on air, right? Mm-hmm. Because we think other people might enjoy it, and we learn stuff from each other. Ergo, other people are going to learn stuff from us. At least those who choose to participate. And so here comes the other part of your argument, and this is what I mean by people not being used to being publicly challenged. You are setting yourself up to be publicly challenged.
Sure.
So are the rest of us. And we do so in a relatively respectful manner. Now, isn't respectful, but he's respectful within the context of our relationship, right? And as people become familiar with him, they'll understand his tone and his patterns. And then that becomes, they'll be able to see what's just him being a dick and what's him just being him, right? And there's a fine nuance there.
Yeah.
Admittedly. But the other thing is if you're a preacher, do you just want to talk to the people who show up and choose to listen to you, or do you want to have conversations with people?
Well, fair enough. But I think I still think that most of the people who listen to the podcast on my end, just sort of because what I contribute to the conversation is allegedly left wing. I think I've demonstrated by now for people who are listening, I'm a terrible liberal.
Marketing is marketing. That's what gets people to listen.
Okay,
right?
so I'm allegedly the representative voice on the left, and I'm the only religious person, and the two of you know that I'm liberal and religious, and those two things are central to my perspective and cannot not be central to my perspective. And so here I've got Ducky sitting across the table. You said to me last week on the feminism podcast, stop bringing religion up, even though the Roman Catholic Church is one of the biggest political movers and shakers in the world. So, okay, means by the... Okay, so I won't take a shot at you about feminism because of that point, but can I give some formal, sort of technical and academic feedback?
No.
Oh, okay.
You may not.
Okay, fair
I'm
enough.
serious, because I want to address your original point. This is a rabbit hole. So here's the thing. The value of the podcast lies in the discourse. The fact that we may be beating our head against the wall and trying 400 different ways to convince each other, that's the value, because there are going to be people on either side who have never heard it that way.
Well, no, I hear that.
And it's bringing that, hey, this is something that's in conflict. Here are the opposing ideas, and we don't have to circle the square for other people to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Here's the thing, though. And I get hardly qualified. Okay? I get the spirit of what we're trying to do, because from my perspective, we want to increase conversation on all kinds of different topics by making it accessible to people. But accessibility happens because people have intelligent and rigorous things to say. Okay? And most of the people who object to me participating from an academic perspective go, the conversation is not at all rigorous. And so what are you doing there? Because you're a PhD student and interested in being a teaching academic at some point in your career. I had a friend of mine recently say, so Rob, sometimes it sounds like you're playing grade 10 piano and talking at grade 2, and nobody outside your podcast audience knows that you can talk at a grade 10 level. And so they think you're an idiot.
Only those who are in the grade 10 class with you.
Yeah, but who in our podcast audience are right? So
well, okay, but let me answer that. I know for a fact that there are academics who listen to this podcast.
Right.
Many of who hear what you say and champion. And many professors at Mount Royal have mentioned to me that they follow the podcast and how much they appreciate your opinion and Ducky's opinion. Okay. We also have listeners all over the world. I updated. I don't know if you saw. I changed the website today, and because I was looking through Canada, U.S., U.K., Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Portugal, Brazil, Mexico, Sweden, Norway, South Korea. Like
not North Korea.
No, not North Korea.
Right.
But right. So we're resonating with someone.
Yeah. I hear that, and I think that's
so.
The value
and that's what I mean. Like, are we speaking to people who want to hear what we want to say, or are we speaking to people who want us to agree with them? But so what we're hearing is two separate things. We got one group of people saying we're not academic enough, and another group of people saying we're not lay enough. So to me, that sounds like we're doing something right. I'm not offended that people don't want to listen. When I tell my friends and I post it. And, some people say, oh, I haven't listened to your podcast. I'm like, that's fine. I don't expect you to. I'm here having a conversation with you two. And as long as there is one other person downloading this podcast,
right,
I will continue doing it. For me, it's worth it. I don't know what, Ducky's evaluation on that is because he does a lot of the labor. But for me, that's rewarding enough.
The investiture of time and effort is justified by having sort of validation from an audience. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
And I mean, like the only people that I actually talk to who listen to the podcast are Willy Wang and Timmy. And Timmy right off the bat said, "I'm bored. I only listened to 3 episodes, and I did it on a road trip where I couldn't get away from it. So, I love you, but I'm not listening anymore." And I'm like, "That's fair, right?" So, but I mean, Wang and Willy both listened to it, and and Wang has actually approached me when it hasn't been up right away and said, "Hey, what's going on?" So,
well, here's something else to consider. Sorry, Bob.
Go ahead.
As this airs, this is episode 10.
Yes.
Okay? None of us are broadcasters. None of us are professional public speakers. I mean, we've all had some experience to some degree, and I realize that this is to be your profession, Bob, and you're getting, it's practice for that, blah, blah, blah. My point is, whoever's jumped ship, come back in a year, and you're going to see a completely different product. I mean, look at what we put out in our first 3 episodes versus what's coming up now. We have something of a structure and a branding philosophy and all these other type of things, right? Yeah. So we're only going to get better, and we're only going to get nicer to each other. Whether or not we get more rational, who knows?
Or people will just get used to us not being nice to each other.
Well, this is me, crossing myself, saying, "Lord, save me now."
Hey, some people watch UFC, some people watch Desperate Housewives, and some people watch Sesame Street. There's a flavor for everybody. That's the beauty of the internet.
Yeah, I hear that.
Now, and as far as academic damage, I really question that. So when people are saying this could cause damage to your academic career, then I have to say, how do you value academic freedom? So if I'm not allowed to talk before I'm a PhD, am I going to be allowed to talk after? Do I have to wait for tenure before I express an opinion?
No, I don't think that's what they mean. Well, okay, so coming from where my friends are coming from, they're qualified. Okay? And they say, About the issues that you are talking about, Rob, like Maddie is a human rights scholar, and so most of the things that were said in the feminism podcast infuriated him precisely because the three of us weren't qualified, and we're making factual errors that were easily correctable.
And you know what? As belligerent as this going to sound, why didn't he post anything on the comments? Why haven't we gotten emails?
This is why. Because from an academic perspective, he says, if this is the level of engagement that you folks are regularly subjecting people to, this is not worth academic engagement. That's how low the level.
I'm sorry, that's bullshit. As an educator, you have to realize there are 4 people in this podcast. The 3 guys at the mic and the other person at the keyboard. If they don't want to speak up, that's not our fault.
No, I
Everywhere you go through
that.
the website, you listen to every single podcast, you listen to our trailers at the end. Consistent theme in our conversation is join us in the conversation. If we're wrong, say so. And you know what? We had somebody step up in episode 7 and call out Ducky, right? Yep. In the comments, and he responded.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, well, okay, but there's the concern, right? Because Maddie about feminism and some other academic folks, they're like, look, the level of engagement is.
Okay, I don't know what you mean when you say level of engagement.
Okay, I'm trying to be polite. Okay, from their perspective, most of the things that are said on our podcast are not factually or academically sound, and we are not intelligent enough to know otherwise, and this is a problem.
Hence the name of the podcast.
Okay, but they say to me, you are the most academically grounded of the three of them, and the fact that occasionally you speak up, okay, it does not. Well, I speak up when I feel like I should speak up, but they basically say to me the reason why it could damage your career is because you are the most academically sound, but you have to sort of sit there for a long time and wade through a lot of stupidity before Rob opens his mouth and says something that's academically sound. And that's not worth it to a lot of people that you'll be interacting with who you're asking for credibility from. And they'll dismiss you because you sat down, you know. I love the idea for the shirt. Ducky, Will, Rob is an idiot. I love that.
So are these the people you want to be with? I mean, and you know what? If your answer is that they're making you choose, then fine, make the choice. We're not going to be offended. My response is I just wouldn't be with people who are going to put me in that position. If I'm not free to express myself, whether or not you agree with me. No, you're not, dude. You're not. They're saying that you're not allowed to subject yourself to a dissenting opinion because it degrades the value of yours.
Yeah. Can I put something in here, please? I've been trying to make a point here for about 5 minutes.
All right.
Sorry.
This is the situation that it looks like for me. This is an analogy that I'm going to draw. Okay. A school teacher who was a porn star, who gets fired from being a teacher, not because she's a bad teacher, but because she did porn. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they're equating you to the teacher and us to the porn. And they're saying that you will lose credibility as an academic if it's revealed that you dared spend time with these, crazy, stupid, retarded losers who are too dumb to listen to us brilliant academics up in our ivory tower and know all the magic that we know. And that our opinions are the only ones that matter, because we're the ones who decide what's academically sound. And if you are going to spend your time listening to people whose opinions aren't based in the same sort of belief system that ours is based in, then you don't have any credibility with us either. And that they're trying to guilt you by association with us. That's the kind of position I see this in, is that the teacher can't be a good teacher because she was a porn star. Is that fair?
Not to say that you don't appreciate their concern, because I think that absolutely your friends and family are trying to look out for your best interest.
Right.
And they don't like us, and that's cool. They don't have
No.
to
They
like
don't.
us.
They don't like Ducky. They're fine with you, Will. They don't like
Okay,
Ducky.
fine. They don't like Ducky. Trust me when I say he is not at all offended by that.
I'm a big boy, and you either really like me or you really hate me. And if people are ambivalent, it means I'm not making an impact.
Oh,
so,
well,
But so the point is, there's concern,
the
but there is that.
confrontational style.
So, and I understand that's where you're hearing, and you're saying, okay, no, these people aren't trying to suppress me, and that's because you're seeing this as an act of love, but the effect is the same, right? Ultimately.
Well, I don't know how to assess that because if it's an act of love or an act of coercion, the fact that it's coming from one or the other matters materially, right? So
That doesn't mean they can't be the same.
well, no, they are different.
I don't. I think I can see where Will's coming from. The motivation is concern for you,
Right.
but the method is coercion. Or implied coercion.
I think, well, my family, I don't know, I can't speak for the academics. My family are ignoring this podcast.
I'm
Sorry.
I'm the target apparently that's causing all this controversy. So I can't help but feel a little bit personally, irritated with that argument.
Okay.
That you're too smart to be hanging out with us.
No, that's not. Well, okay, that's not. I communicated it badly. They're not trying to. Well, I know one person that actually.
That is what they're saying, but they didn't mean it to be an offense. Look, I know that by having my website up and even outside of Hardly Qualified, posting essays and stories and the way I do, it's going to affect potential employers. It's going to affect clients. There are people who are going to consider hiring me and Google me and hit my site and go, fuck this. I don't want to be around this guy.
Right.
The question you have to ask yourself is, are you willing to sacrifice that, to be willing to accept those consequences in order to be true to yourself and your friendships? Or are you willing to go the other way and decide that, it isn't worth it. The risks are too great.
And you know what? It's a fair question because
I think that's the fundamental position that Bob is in.
I also want to make a distinction between our friendship, boys, will not be negatively affected if I leave the podcast, unless I'm very wrong. So
No.
what I'm trying to
speak for yourself. No,
Oh,
I'm kidding,
fuck
I'm kidding, I'm
you
kidding.
two. Fuck you two. Affectionately and with many hugs, but fuck you too. So what I'm trying to assess is, since the friendship between the three of us is solid, I can keep the friendship with the two of you just fine, and we can do Denny's till the day we die. And I'm not sure that this podcast is worth the potential weirdness for my academic career. I'm not sure.
You have to choose your battles, dude. I totally get it.
Yep. So this is why I wanted to bring this up.
No, but it's important. And, again, we didn't really know what we were going to talk about. We were going to babble on about politics. Well, here's the politics of open discourse.
I guess
right?
so.
Speech has consequence.
Yes.
And we talk about free speech, but just because you're allowed to speak doesn't necessarily mean that you should speak.
Yes.
And this
We
is
each have the right to self-censorship.
yeah, and
Let's put it
and,
that way.
and this is what people are reminding you of. And I guess now you have to make the choice, and we're not going to be offended either way. Well, we might be offended, but we'll get over it.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to be secretly glad because I've been trying to get rid of you for months.
I
Well,
see.
there you go.
I see. You might get your wish, Ducky. I'll just sneak up on you a different way.
I'm teasing. Oh my god, I just complained about you.
I know. I can tell when you're teasing. Maybe I had a friend of mine the other day. He said, "Do you know that your range of verbal affect is quite small, Rob?" And I said, "You've got to be kidding me." And he said, "No, because most of the time when people are teasing you, you don't let on that you know." And I'm like, "I know that they're teasing me all the time. How does this work?" Anyway, so yeah, there it is again, I guess. But anyways, yes,
So
I always know when you're
it
teasing
comes
me,
down to
Ducky.
consequences, right?
Right.
It's like, and it's for me, the reason why I feel comfortable making that and doing the website and putting my essays and my stories and whatever else up there, my pictures,
Right.
and being quote unquote a public intellectual,
Yeah.
is I dealt with this in my business.
Right.
I've lost clients because I'm gay. I've had problems with employers because I'm gay. Calgary is a very, gay friendly, gay positive city.
Yeah.
But not everybody, there's 1.3 million residents. Not everybody marches to the same beat around here,
Uh-huh.
and that's the way it should be. So
Diversity of thought and opinion.
yeah, so I accept that there's consequences to being who I am, and I can pretend to be somebody I'm not, but I'm not comfortable with it. I don't do a very good job of it, and I just rather not. I get one life, and when I'm done, it's back to the stars from which I came, and you know what? So if other people got a problem with me, they can either choose to engage in a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
or they can choose not to associate. And if that impacts me economically, then fine. I don't see it impacting me economically because I will always survive. I will always find an outlet.
Well, for every person who doesn't want to deal with you, there's going to be two people who probably will.
And that has been my experience. So it may mean that it impacts your chances within your diocese, but you may not. You may be celebrated for it. Or it may open up a door elsewhere. One of the things, coming back to a religious perspective, and we've talked about this offline before, is you've talked about the evolution of modern Christianity into fundamentalism, right?
Yeah.
So from a kind of a meso-Christianity to a neo-Christianity, and how it seems to have gotten more judgmental.
Yes.
And for me, that is something I never considered before. I know within a modern atheist discourse, it's irrelevant.
Mm.
But if you want to consider the breadth of things, that's a really interesting idea, and it's allowed me to have conversations with friends who are Muslim who have also noticed the same thing within the Islamic community.
Right.
And I've proposed to bring the two of you together onto the podcast and have that conversation separately. And I think that's something I would still like to do if you're willing.
Yeah.
But same, and Ducky talking about counter-feminism. Again, these are the two of you enrich my life in so many ways and bringing things that I've never even considered. And if a little blood is spilt in it, I guess, whatever. I feel like a much better person for it, and I appreciate the opportunity. And the whole point of the podcast was to share that with anybody who's willing to tolerate a little bit of juvenility. So,
okay. I hear you. I hear you. Well, I personally find many aspects of this a lot of fun. And I still don't understand all the reasons why I show up every week, and I still need to, like I said, I still need to give it a good think. But in my tradition, there's a phrase, the thoughts of the heart. So it can't just be for me a strictly cerebral decision.
Well, let me I'm going to speak on Will's behalf here as well. Let me just assure you that no bridges will be burnt, whatever your decision.
Wicked. Or awesome,
okay?
Whichever. Yeah.
It may be tinged, though.
Oh, please.
No, they won't even be tinged. I mean, I think
Singed.
we're all mature, responsible enough to recognize that, this isn't for everybody, and
Absolutely.
that doesn't just include our listeners, it also includes our hosts.
I think that's true.
So don't feel like, you're obligated by our history and our friendships to continue to put yourself at risk, or at what you perceive to be a risk.
Understood.
For our benefit, right?
I hear
Okay? You aggravate me to no end, but I don't want to see you go. That being said, I'm not going to pressure you to stick around, because, whatever consequences come from your decision, you will have to bear them, and you will have to bear them alone. Right? I don't share in those consequences, so I really don't have a vested interest.
Gotcha.
So all I can do is say, do what you think is right, and I'm not going to think any less of you for whatever you choose.
Very cool. Thank you. It means a lot.
There. Is that reconciliatory enough for you, dickhead?
Fuck you, asshole.
So I guess, yeah, I'm not going to apologize for doing this. I'm going to miss you if you go, but please don't.
Okay.
Hey there, HQ fan. Do you read Maclean's, Money Sense, Chatelaine maybe? Because if you do, you can go to the Hardly Qualified main page and click the Rogers button there to help support Hardly Qualified. You're going to read it anyway, right? So you might as well help out Hardly Qualified in the process, since we get a cut of any subscriptions earned through our site. And if you don't read any of the Rogers Media magazines, perhaps now is the best time to start. So remember, if you love the voiceover boy and you don't want him to get any more beatings, you'll read some magazines from the Hardly Qualified page. You don't hate voiceover boys, do you?
You know, in our last episode, we talked about Amanda Palmer. And I actually looked up that TED Talk, and I was really impressed by it. And we're going to throw it in the show notes again for this one, the link for that, Amanda Palmer's TED Talk. And I really liked how the message she was trying to say is, you know what, the problem isn't that we need to make people pay for content, it's that we need to allow them to pay for content. And we haven't done that. Not that I'm expecting to wake up tomorrow morning with $1 million sitting in my PayPal account, because one, that's not going to happen, and two, they would steal it all because PayPal does that. We'll give you the opportunity, whether or not you take it. You know, then at least we can't say that nobody supports us. And
I'm actually really glad that Maya introduced me to Amanda Palmer, because on one hand, I can't stand her music. I really don't like her music. I've listened to 3 or 4 of her songs, and I'm just like, 10 seconds of this is enough.
Yeah.
But when it comes to her ideas, she's brilliant, and I have very little complaints about the ideas and thoughts that she puts forward.
She's an amazing artist, not so much a musician, but I mean, well, she even says so in her TED Talk, right? She's like, we're very much you kind of like us, right? You either like us or you don't. You know, you're not. You have to seek us out. You're not going to find us on the sidelines, type of thing.
I just don't see like Maya's fascination with her, because she's like so infatuated. She's like, oh my god, Amanda Palmer is the best at everything, and I'm like, not really at the whole singing part, but you know, but I don't know. I don't like her songs, but I think she's a great person, and I'll listen to any idea that she has to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
as long as she's not singing it.
So, can I ask my question about video games before you spiral down into flames? Okay, if we haven't already, let's rise from the ashes. Okay. So,
like a phoenix rising?
Okay. Yes, I was going there. But, okay, so, pursuant to the conversation sort of about Lara Croft and video games in general. So, I had a friend of mine this week be a little bit cheeky and mostly serious, and he says, I have this theory that idiocy is directly proportional to number of hours playing video games. So I don't actually agree with that, but he said I would love to see a study done that would sort of see if there's actually a correlation. But,
as in a positive correlation or a negative correlation?
Well, your level of idiocy increases the greater your number of hours playing video games a week. Okay.
See, because video games is no different. It's a form of media.
Right.
So you really have to question what kind of video games they're playing. Just like, you know, you can be a brilliant person and watch hours and hours of television.
Right.
Yeah.
Depending on what kind of television you're watching. If you're watching, you know, Sesame Street and History Channel, chances are you'll be a little bit brighter than somebody who's watching wrestling.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Or Monster Truck. So once again, I would reject the premise immediately that because the implication of that very question is loaded with the implication that video games make you stupid, and that only retards play them. Right. And
yes.
So I think I would hope your friend is being more than just a little bit cheeky, because that is a very bigoted sense of point of view.
Wow. Okay. So, well, I didn't fully agree, for the record, because I was like, okay, so basically I said, well, okay, what I said to my friend was, I'll humor you for a moment, but first of all, you would need to actually have an operational definition of idiocy that you could actually quantify. But I guess the second part of this question, so I agree with you that, idiocy doesn't increase because of ingesting media in general. But I know, being a Star Trek fan, that one of the stereotypes that people are still getting over because it's in the cultural consciousness is William Shatner sort of sitting there going, "Get a life" on SNL. And so, Trekkers, Star Trek fans can't get laid, are intellectually slow, socially sort of discombobulated, etc., etc., etc.
I wouldn't say intellectually slow. It's usually people who the context that I've always heard is if you like Star Trek, it's because you're a nerd.
Well, there's
Right.
You're
nothing.
socially maladjusted.
Yeah, you're socially maladjusted. You're awkward in social situations. You're unattractive to the opposite or same sex.
Thank you for that. By the way.
That you're unattractive in romantic context. Let's put it that way.
Okay, right. So where do you think that comes from? Because it's not true. Like, some of the most, like, I'll just, to follow up on the Star Trek example, like Kate Mulgrew, who plays Captain Janeway on Star Trek Voyager, for people that don't watch it, is honestly one of the most intelligent people I've ever seen sort of interact in the forum. And she considers that most serious Star Trek fans are highly intelligent and socially sophisticated people. And so she deliberately sort of walks around disrupting the stereotype. So here's my question. Where does the stereotype come from, if it isn't true?
Oh, I know exactly where that comes from.
Okay.
Being a recent convert I used to think that people who spent endless hours on end playing video games were wasting their lives, and was very highly critical of them.
Okay.
Sorry.
Fucking losers, get out of your mom's basement, right?
Yeah, or my basement. But anyway.
Okay.
To his credit, he did. No.
Oops.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah, I'm talking about you.
I never lived in your basement.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. I lived in the upstairs room.
Yeah, but you lived in the basement first.
I slept on a cot in the basement.
Well, my point being, and you played video games all day when you weren't working. So, I used to judge you that way. I never understood it. And then, and I think it comes from because it's a whole reality. It's a whole form of storytelling, a system of thinking, a whole set of logic and social interactions that unless you're in it, you don't appreciate it because you have no means of reference, right? And the people who are in it are communicating with those on the other side of the screen. Rarely are they communicating that type of... I mean, it's very much changed now, especially with this generation. But when we were growing up, it was very much he's kind of one of those odd guys, right?
Mm-hmm. Neckbeardy basement dwellers, yeah.
Yeah, so at Mount Royal, we have Club Nerd, which is actually the largest student society on campus. It's about 400 or 500 members, which is pretty significant.
That's
if you
awesome.
consider our population, our active population is like 9,000 on campus. Yeah, and it's all about gaming and celebrating cosplay, or doing cosplay and board games, computer games, like the whole thing, sci-fi, fantasy, mostly sci-fi.
Can I just clarify something quick? Cosplay is costume play, yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Fair enough.
So it's hold on, let me finish. It's really much, it only started 2 years ago and it's just exploded on our campus. And I've interviewed for the paper the lady who started it, the girl who started it, whatever. And I asked her, I'm like, so, where did this come from? And she said, I just wanted to allow people to celebrate geek culture. And I was expecting it to be a small club. And it's grown to the point where there's now a My Little Pony club on campus, and we actually have an esports league that is broken off from Club Nerd, where people train to do professional gaming, right?
Wow.
So this all and I kind of found it intimidating because now a large part of my social group are gamers, and I had no idea how to communicate and relate to these people. And then I got a beta invitation to PlanetSide 2, and I've always been a beta tester. I've been doing it for years. I've routers and just a whole bunch of different things, software, hardware. It's been a hobby of mine. So I'm like, okay, I'll do a beta test for this, and ended up in the beta, and I fell in love with the game. And then I started to see the social aspects of it and the game mechanics, and learn the language and learn the logic, and start to feel that sense of camaraderie with my squad mates and the outfit, and and all these, they're called guilds or whatever in other places, but the concepts are essentially the same. And so now it really reminded me brought me back to the days of IRC, right? Before Facebook and MSN came and destroyed all that, where you would log on to a random server and you would chat with people for hours that you don't know, different cultures, their own lives, and you would bond with them pseudo-anonymously. So there are people that, and now it's a lot easier to have more of a real connection through voice and video than it was back then. But, you get invested in these people's lives, and they become your friends, and they contribute to your life, and that physicality is removed. And I think that until you've been exposed to it and participate in it, that can be really disconcerting.
I think that is exactly the most salient point, that I have found that anybody who has a sort of detrimental, discriminatory, prejudicial, disapproving sense of what gamers are or what games do or that kind of stuff has never actually played a game, has never actually been involved in that kind of stuff. And I think because once you get involved, you can see the value in it, and it's no longer becomes a target of ridicule. It's just something you're not part of,
especially
right?
MMOs.
And it's not even just limited to that. I mean, like, look at wrestling, look at football, fantasy football.
Right.
Fantasy football is a perfect example. It is Dungeons and Dragons for jocks.
Right.
Right? And everybody in the world is a nerd about something. So all this sort of argument about, good nerds and bad nerds and that kind of stuff is just, it seems to me it's just tribalism, and they're just arguing over who's, a hobby is better, right?
Sure.
And now there's little distinction between the jocks and the nerds. I mean, they're often the same people.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't matter so much anymore. We all have our, like the bronies.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. I don't understand it, but I mean,
bronies are My Little Pony.
They're male My Little Pony fans.
Oh, gotcha.
Between the ages of 15 and 24, the show was designed to target females in the, I think, 9 to 16.
9 to 12. Or,
16 might be too high.
Now, is there...
Yeah, I think 9 to 14 is probably more, or 9 to 13, something like that.
Here's
but it's targeted at prepubescent girls.
But is there also a sexual orientation overlap? For most bronies are gay men or not?
No, I don't think you could say that.
I
know a lot that are,
okay.
But I also know a lot of furries that are gay. That doesn't mean that all furries are gay.
Well, no,
right?
I'm just wondering if there's a significant Venn diagram overlap, right?
The only bronies I know are all straight.
Interesting, fair enough.
But I mean, to be perfectly fair, most of the people I know are straight. I mean, I know in my life, I know probably 5 gay people.
Wow.
And 2 bisexuals, right? So, I mean, that might have more to do with my limited exposure to gay people, or at least people for whom I know is gay, or are gay, or bisexual, or whatever. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I don't think that there's any causal relationship between being gay and liking My Little Pony.
Well, no, of course not.
Just like there's no difference if you're straight doesn't mean you're going to like the Dallas Cowboys. I mean,
right. Well, fair enough. But I guess I was curious because you said that the target demographic was young girls or young-ish girls, and so I'm just, maybe it's my sort of, I'm glad there are exceptions, but I still have a perception in general society that things that are targeted to women that men like, the almost automatic association will be you'll be gay, because gay is coded feminine in a lot of people's
Yeah.
heads. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very...
There's nothing
in
wrong
my
with
perception... No, I know, but I think it's a generational thing.
Sure.
I look at the kids.
Yep.
Sorry, but to all my friends that go to Mount Royal that listening to it, I'm probably closer to age than some of your parents than I am to you. So, and it's very rare that distinction ever comes up, but there is a generational gap.
Yep.
So I don't think that that matters so much to them anymore. I mean, I really don't.
I think that's
I don't know if you
great.
saw this story. I think it was Hasbro that was whoever makes the Easy Bake Oven.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard about this a while ago. Mattel, sorry. There was a story about a young girl who had written a complaint letter to Mattel asking them to make their marketing for the Easy Bake Oven more gender neutral, or at least male friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Because her younger brother had actually taken over her Easy Bake Oven, had fallen in love with it, and she could care less about it. But he was having social issues because it's pink and it's got flowers on it. Right. And there's no reason why we have to still, at this day and age, stereotype women as the producers of food exclusively, and only women like to bake, and which is completely weird to me, because as a profession, master bakers and professional bakers tend to be men.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever,
That's something that Maya and I talked about a few months back, when because it's in Sweden is where this took place.
Okay.
And what they're trying to do is they're trying to go into gender neutral advertising, so that there's no toys that are specifically designed to one sex or the other. And the funny way that she put it was that, if you're trying to determine whether a toy is for boys or girls, you just have to ask yourself one question. Do you operate the toy with your genitals? If you do, or if you do operate the toy with your genitals, then it's not for children. And if you don't operate it with your genitals, then it doesn't matter. It's for both sexes.
That's
right?
such an interesting way to put it. I love that. Yeah,
and that's because I don't care if it's an Easy Bake Oven or a G.I. Joe. I mean, there is value, I think, in both aspects of play that any person can take from it.
Well, I used to have a huge Care Bear collection. I owned all except for two of the original Care Bears.
I've got one sitting right beside me.
I still have a few.
Good Luck Bear. Yeah, Good Luck Bear has been my favorite Care Bear since I was 4 years old, and I've got one sitting on my desk right here.
Yeah, I have a stuffed Stitch from Lilo and Stitch right next to my monitor. I mean, stuffed animals are very much a part of our culture, but it doesn't make because I'm feminine. It might be easy to say, well, you're gay, so you don't know, but no.
I mean, looking at my computer desk right now, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stuffed animals, including that bat that you bought for me years ago. It's still sitting on my computer.
I also have an impact drill on the other side, so what does that mean?
Yeah. Right. But, it's just, I don't know, it reminds me of a Sesame Street episode where I was watching a couple days ago that, it was last month, where Baby Bear was playing with a doll. And he was embarrassed about playing with a doll. And he didn't want his friends to know that he was playing with a doll and that he really liked playing with his doll. And Gordon comes along and he's like, why are you embarrassed? And he's like, well, because dolls are for girls. And Gordon's like, no, they're not. Dolls are for anybody. Look at it this way. It is teaching you how to be a good father. That you are practicing the skills by taking care of this doll. You're practicing the skills that you'll need to be a good father. And that one day when you have a child of your own, those skills will be able to transfer. Right? And there's value in that. It just really bothers me. There's this sort of idea that there's either role, there's specific things that are designed solely for one sex or the other, or that you can't do something.
Right.
Because of, you have feminists who...
2 minutes and then I gotta go, sorry.
okay, you had feminists who fought to sort of break the mold that women were inherent housewives, right? But then they turned around and they said, well, if you're a woman, you shouldn't be a housewife, right? And the position I always hold is I don't care if you want to be a housewife or not. You should have the choice. Right. And that's the way I see it with toys. That's the way I see it with any of these kind of gender dynamics. That, sure, I mean, there might be things that appeal to men more than they appeal to women, but that doesn't mean they're reserved for men or for women, or that, what I mean? So if you've got a woman who wants to drive a monster truck, so be it.
All power to you. Exactly.
Just like you have men who want to be nurses.
Yep.
Right? And the idea that a man can't be a nurse or a woman can't be a monster truck, or the same thing, that a man has to be a monster truck driver or a woman has to be a nurse. That's it's the choice, or the lack of choice that I find very repugnant in a lot of those sort of stereotypes. Right. Which is why I'm kind of glad to see that the options are being opened up to people a little more.
So my clock says I have 1 minute and then I gotta go. So.
All right. Well, any final thoughts? I know you don't like the parting shots, but it rhymes. That's why
I know. The parting shot this time will be, oh, Ducky, how can you say that gender is not a social construction based on what just came out of your mouth? Which I fully agree with, by the way.
It's based
There's
on
no
biology.
time for a rebuttal.
Okay.
So
well,
get out of here.
Yeah, we hope to see you again next week, Bob.
Well, thanks.
And subsequent weeks.
I appreciate the conversation as always, gents. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
So, any thoughts and shots?
Not really. I'm sad to hear that our discourse is causing conflict in Bob's personal life. But I don't know if that says more about us or if it says more about the people he has in his life. Does that make sense? It's hard to.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that I don't see it as a failing on their part so much as it's just a difference in perspective, right? They want to protect him, and they're used to, and you know what? We don't know what things are like in Toronto. Here in Calgary, it's very much a
meritocracy.
Thank you, meritocracy. You're judged on what you do and what you say, and hopefully, and for the most part, people are willing to look at what you do and what you say in context of, 30-second sound bites tend not to fly very well around here, in my experience. And I think you would agree with that. I mean, we're very much about holding each other accountable for the whole balloon, not just the part of it that looks ugly. So maybe politics is different over there. Maybe it's different within his church or within his tradition or within whatever it is that's causing the upset. It's something that I don't understand, and it's something that I really don't appreciate from a conceptual point of view, and from just I really actually don't like it. But I understand if that's the choice he has to make, and I understand why people who feel it's a concern are raising it. I just don't agree with that. Not that they're raising it. I just don't agree that the concern is valid.
Yeah.
So
it seems it's what like I said, it seems kind of like to me that mommy is saying, I don't like the friends you're hanging out with, type thing.
I think it's easy to pigeonhole it like that. That was kind of my initial reaction, and I think I actually reacted that way in the conversation. Part of it is like, suck it up. But the other reality is he is working towards a degree, and it is, clergy, and that's a very political position.
Yeah.
Right? So, and maybe he wants to have the freedom to take stands and change his mind without having these conversations coming back to bite him. And those are very valid concerns. Myself, I've said it once, I've said it a million times. It's the first thing you see when you come to my website. My opinions today, I reserve the right to change tomorrow because I'm willing to be educated and I'm willing to have a discussion. And
I can accept that I'm wrong.
And I can accept that I'm wrong. And if you have to pigeonhole me about something that I did 5 years ago, well, then that's your problem. And
it says more about you than it does about me. So.
And, if that means that there are real consequences that I have to deal with because of your choices, again, whatever. It's not something I have any control over, so I'm not going to worry about other people's thoughts and feelings. I'm going to worry about my thoughts and feelings. I'm not going to be belligerent or disrespectful, but I'm also not going to stay silent because I might offend somebody. Because you know what? I guarantee you I'm going to offend somebody.
Yeah.
As long as they know I'm being honest that my offense is to the idea, not to the individual, then that's really all that matters as far as I'm concerned. So, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is the end of the choppy episode. Sorry about that, but I think you'll agree that the content was interesting and important. Because if you don't agree, you probably stopped listening a long time ago. So thank you very much for your support. We'll see you guys next week, or hear you or speak to you, however you want to define that. And we're going to leave with a song by Gunnarolla called Canadian Please. It's really good. You should check out the YouTube channel. It's going to be in the links, and we'll yap at you later.
You wanna be Canadian, please. Even if in winter things tend to freeze, we got the world monopoly on trees, and our country's bordered by 3 different seas.
Yeah, I know that you wanna be Canadian, please. We invented the zipper, we got expertise. We made insulin to combat disease. Yeah, I know that you wanna be Canadian, please.
Britain got the monarchy, the US has the money, but I know that you wanna be Canadian. France, you got the wine and cheese, koala, chew with the Aussies, but I know that you wanna be
Ici ce n'était pas assez, on a 2 langues officielles, l'anglais et le français. Ooh la la.
Yeah, I know that you wanna be Canadian, please. Where else do you find mounted police or go to the hospital and not pay fees? I know that you wanna be Canadian, please.
And when freshwater's in high demand, we got the world's largest supply on hand. So you know that we can make a pretty good friend, but it's even better if we can be.
Britain got the monarchy, the US has the money, but I know that you wanna be Canadian. France, you got the wine and cheese, koala, chew with the Aussies, but I know that you wanna be Canadian.
So you're thinking to yourself, how do I live in this beautiful country? Well, I've got some steps for you to follow.
Step 1, lose the gun. Step 2, buy a canoe. Step 3, live multiculturally. Step 4, you ready? There is no more. We got beavers, caribou, and moose. We got buffalo bears and Canadian goose. And we're sorry about Celine Dion, but she did do that good song for James Cameron. Cameron.
Britain got the monarchy, the US has the money, but I know that you wanna be Canadian. France, you got the wine and cheese, koalas, chew with the Aussies, but I know that you wanna be Canadian. The Greek sculpture with Socrates can build a wall like the Chinese, but I know that you wanna be Canadian. In Kenya they have safaris, we miss lots of other countries, but I know that you wanna be Canadian.
Thank you for listening to Hardly Qualified. Our website can be found at hardlyqualified.ca, and there you can download episodes, leave comments, and check references and links mentioned in the shows. The hosts are on Twitter. Will is at Will Connor, Rob is at Theology Writer, and Ducky is at AngryDuck_HQ. They can also be reached by email at will, rob, or angryduck@hardlyqualified.ca. All music, unless otherwise specified, is from the game EVE Online and is property of CCP Games. The music can be found at community.eveonline.com/downloads/music. No copyright infringement is intended. The podcast is recorded on Saturday afternoons and scheduled for download the following Friday, which can also be found on iTunes. Thank you, and tune in next week.